Part of my education at the University of Cincinnati was influenced by the Bauhaus. The idea was that you use a material for what it's capable of doing. So you don't make something out of wood that should be made out of iron. And that's a principle in making art. I came to the computer because of what its nature is, what it can do, the nature of programming, the possibility of motion and sound and time. To me, it was a technology of our time, and if I were a painter of my time, I have to use the technology of my time.
But your meditation.
I was born in 1936 in Jerusalem, Palestine, where we were exiled in 1948. We moved to Beirut. From Beirut, my father decided he wants to get out of the path of war in the Arab world, so he brought us to the USA. I studied art at the University of Cincinnati and have been painting ever since. My name is Samia Halaby. I'm 81 years old. I'm a painter, and I use the Amiga to make art. Well, I'm getting ready for an exhibition in Dubai. So I have a big painting on the floor because it has to be up open to the air for another week and a half. So, and the hanging pieces, they're a lot of fun. They're stitched. I call them hanging gardens. I like it when there's a little air in the room and they start spinning. This is where I clean my brush if I have too much paint and I'm cheap or don't want to throw it out. I decorate my kitchen. And here's the studio, another huge painting in the offing. I'm into red and blue in those two paintings. Here's the Amiga, which is still alive and kicking, 30 years old. But compared to me, it's just a kid. Remember these? Amiga World. I sent them once some of my artwork, hoping that they would get excited. 30 years ago, I was 50. So it wasn't coming into my life as a time when I was a kid. It was coming in at a time where I wanted to do something. And it's a challenge I posed to myself, and the Amiga allowed me to fulfill the challenge. My sister bought an Apple II, and I could program a logo on it, and I was hooked. So I went around looking, and I could see the Amiga had many colors. Even in just the ads for the Amiga were many colors, whereas the PC at the time only had 4 colors. So I brought it home, and I just could not stop using it. I knew I wanted to program, and that's the only reason I wanted the computer. I had no other use for it at the time. Commodore Amiga was speaking to people like me who wanted to do programs for themselves. So I just started programming using Amiga Basic, which is very easy, and then C. I spent the most time using C. You have a new medium, and you want to see what is in the medium and what you can do with it. We're looking at a piece called Rain, in which I used a random number generator that I wrote myself to drop little rectangles like rain in a certain limited area. And then in order to clean the screen and see the fresh things that were happening, I designed a windshield wiper, which is basically a line that goes back and forth and erases. So the erasure is part of the accidents that happen in the painting. When you run a program, everything just happens so fast, and a painting should have a certain rhythm, so I would often use the timer and just slow down things. I needed to structure how fast things happen, and I didn't want them to just all happen fast, because the computer doesn't care. It just does its job as fast as it could. While when we imitate reality, reality things happen sometimes slowly, sometimes fast. Here's the pilot command, and this first number was an identification number. And then I could give it an RGB number. And it was fun to just play with RGB numbers and get colors, see what colors would come out. Light is made of 3 primaries, red, green, blue. 3 for red, 1 for green, and 5 for blue, which meant that it was sort of purplish, but not a bright purple, and a dark one because they're not very high numbers. A program is like a city, a function is like a factory or a home. You put stuff in it on one end and then they come out on the other, all formed. How the program moves from one part to the other, the logic of it was very nice. And to me, that was part of the creative process. You're looking at a piece called Bird Dog, and American slang, I think Bird Dog means someone who just follows you around all the time. That's why I call it Bird Dog, because there are 2 shapes that are hooked onto each other, and they change in shape and size, but they never get unhooked. See, I'm using the number generator here, but they're little dots being created or lines like rain. And this is obviously some kind of yo-yo. The yo-yo is a term I gave to a style in making variables, where I have a variable on an upper bound and a lower bound, and the numbers keep going up and down. Any number that I throw into the variable would then start going up by steps that I can also define, going up 1 at a time, 2 at a time, 3 at a time, go up slowly until it reaches an upper bound. And then when it reaches that highest number, it starts going minus until it reaches a lower bound and then starts going up again. The top shape is on 2 variables, one for the x and one for the y. And as one increases and decreases and goes back and forth, the other one also goes back and forth. And together they decide the location of where that point would be to make the top of the shape. When I'm looking at the Amiga, what is the artwork here? Is it something digital in thin air, just a bunch of zeros? And well, maybe part of it is that, part of it is the program logic, but the hardware itself, the machine itself sitting in front of me is the artwork, and when I want to show it, I have to show it on this machine. It can't be seen anywhere else. The computer itself is the medium. I mean, the Amiga is what makes the artwork. Any computer can make artwork, but I did it with the Amiga and the versatility of the Amiga and the possibility of being creative with it. So I'm not making drawn images in the Amiga. I'm using commands, and the Amiga executes the commands, and you see the result of that execution on the Amiga. Now, if they'd make a modern Amiga that has a nice, easy interface, and the mouse works properly, and the screen isn't turning yellow, and the whole thing isn't about to go kaput, I'd use it.